Patriots, the Fifth Circuit just did something outrageous. They appear to be defying a 9-0 unanimous Supreme Court decision issued just months ago, and this case could be heading back to the Supreme Court already. We're talking about Barnes versus Felix, the excessive force case where the Supreme Court unanimously reversed the Fifth Circuit's moment of threat rule. The Supreme Court told them to apply totality of circumstances, but the Fifth Circuit just re-ruled without new briefs or oral arguments and came to the same conclusion. It's like they ignored the Supreme Court's instructions. Before we expose this judicial defiance, smash that subscribe button. We're covering the case that tests whether circuit courts will obey Supreme Court orders. Let's hit 1.3 million subscribers. Let's break down this constitutional crisis. The original case facts. Let me tell you what happened that started this entire case. Officer Roberto Felix Jr. pulled over Aston Barnes for suspected toll violations. Apparently, cameras in the Houston area picked up Barnes's license plate with alleged toll violations. It might have been a rental car with unpaid tolls, minor traffic issue. Officer Felix told Barnes to exit the vehicle. Barnes opened the door as if to comply, but then Barnes made a bad decision. He attempted to drive away. Officer Felix then made an equally bad decision. He jumped onto the ledge of the fleeing car. While grasping onto the moving vehicle, Officer Felix pulled his firearm and shot Aston Barnes twice. Barnes was fatally shot and died at the scene. Was this justified? That's what the courts had to decide. Barnes's mother sued Officer Felix on behalf of her son, alleging the officer violated Barnes's Fourth Amendment rights through excessive force. The question, was deadly force reasonable for a toll violation traffic stop where the suspect was fleeing in a vehicle? The Fifth Circuit's moment of threat rule. The district court granted summary judgment for Officer Felix using the Fifth Circuit's moment of threat rule. What's the moment of threat rule? It asks only, was the officer in danger at the precise moment he used deadly force? Events leading up to the shooting? Not relevant. Officers' own actions that created the danger? Don't consider them. Essentially, the rule creates a narrow snapshot analysis. Look only at the split second when the trigger was pulled. Under this rule, the Fifth Circuit said, Officer Felix was in danger when he was on the ledge of a moving car. Therefore, deadly force was justified. They ignored, this was a toll violation stop. Officer chose to jump on the car. Officer put himself in danger. Barnes was fleeing, not attacking. The Fifth Circuit upheld the officer's use of deadly force, but Barnes's family appealed to the Supreme Court. The unanimous 9-0 reversal. The Supreme Court took the case and issued a unanimous 9-0 decision. That means all 9 justices, liberal and conservative, agreed the Fifth Circuit got it wrong. The Supreme Court held, excessive force claims under the Fourth Amendment require analyzing the totality of circumstances, not just the moment of threat, the entire situation. The Supreme Court explained, the totality of circumstances inquiry has no time limit. While the precise moment of shooting often matters most, earlier facts and circumstances may bear on how a reasonable officer would have understood and responded. Prior events may show why a reasonable officer would perceive conduct as threatening or innocuous. The Supreme Court was saying, you can't just look at the split second. You have to consider, why was the officer there? What were the officer's actions? What created the dangerous situation? Was deadly force reasonable given all the facts? This was a total rejection of the Fifth Circuit's narrow moment of threat rule. The Supreme Court vacated the Fifth Circuit's decision and remanded the case, sending it back down for reanalysis using the correct totality of circumstances approach. Everyone assumed the Fifth Circuit would look at all the facts and likely rule against the officer this time.
The Fifth Circuit's shocking re-ruling. Here's where it gets outrageous. The case went back to the Fifth Circuit for re-review, but instead of requesting new briefs, holding oral arguments, carefully reconsidering the case, the Fifth Circuit panel just quickly re-ruled on their own. And what did they decide? The exact same outcome. They held, even under the totality of circumstances approach, Officer Felix's actions were still justified. Their reasoning? Any vehicle flight creates a deadly threat. Felix reasonably used lethal force to prevent a dangerous chase. Wait, what? The Supreme Court just told them they were applying the wrong test. The Supreme Court unanimously reversed them. And the Fifth Circuit comes back with the same result using supposedly the correct test? This looks like defiance. It's like they're saying, fine, Supreme Court, we'll say we're using your test, but we're going to reach the same conclusion anyway. Even more concerning, Judge Higginbottom had previously written a concurrence saying that under the totality of circumstances approach, the officer's use of deadly force would be unconstitutional. But now, after remand, the same panel says it's constitutional under that very test. How does that make sense? The en banc denial. Barnes's attorneys immediately recognized the problem. They filed a petition for en banc review, asking the full Fifth Circuit to reconsider. Their arguments. Argument number 1. The panel's new ruling contradicts the Supreme Court's unanimous decision. Argument number 2. The ruling effectively creates a per se rule that officers may shoot any fleeing driver even for minor stops. Argument number 3. This conflicts with Supreme Court precedent and Fifth Circuit precedent that fleeing in a vehicle doesn't automatically justify deadly force. Argument number 4. The panel didn't even request new briefs or hold oral arguments after the Supreme Court's remand. But the Fifth Circuit quickly denied en banc review. The order simply stated, the petition for panel rehearing is denied. No member of the panel was interested in reviewing this case. No member was interested? Not one judge on the entire Fifth Circuit wanted to review whether the panel properly applied the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling? The Fifth Circuit then issued its official mandate on December 21st, officially closing the case. Heading back to SCOTUS? Now Barnes's family has until February to decide. Do they take this case back to the Supreme Court? Think about that. The Supreme Court ruled on this case just 6-7 months ago. They issued a unanimous 9-0 decision, and already the case might be heading back because the Fifth Circuit appears to have ignored their instructions. If Barnes's family petitions the Supreme Court again, their argument will be, the Fifth Circuit paid lip service to the totality of circumstances test, but didn't actually apply it. They reached the exact same result they reached before using the test you told them was wrong. The Fifth Circuit is defying your unanimous ruling. Please step in and enforce your own precedent. This would be extraordinary. The Supreme Court rarely has to review the same case twice within months. But if circuit courts won't follow Supreme Court instructions, what choice does the court have? Why this matters. Let me explain why this case matters for everyone, not just Fourth Amendment scholars. First, Supreme Court authority. If circuit courts can ignore unanimous Supreme Court rulings, what's the point of having a Supreme Court? Lower courts are supposed to follow Supreme Court precedent. That's how our judicial system works. Second, excessive force standards. This case affects every interaction between police and citizens. If officers can use deadly force whenever someone flees, even for minor violations, that's a huge expansion of police power. This started as a toll violation, not armed robbery, not violent crime, toll violation.
Third, officer accountability. The Fifth Circuit's approach shields officers from accountability for creating dangerous situations. Officer Felix chose to jump on a moving car. He created the danger, but under the Fifth Circuit's logic, he can then use deadly force to defend himself from the danger he created. Fourth, gun owner implications. Many police shootings involve gun owners. If courts apply narrow, moment-of-threat analysis instead of totality of circumstances, gun owners can be shot for lawful actions that officers misperceive as threatening. The totality of circumstances test protects citizens by requiring courts to consider all the facts. Fifth, judicial defiance. If the Fifth Circuit can ignore Supreme Court rulings, other circuits will feel emboldened to do the same. This threatens the entire system of judicial hierarchy. Sixth, Fourth Amendment erosion. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. If courts rubber stamp officer actions without truly examining reasonableness, the Fourth Amendment becomes meaningless. What happens next? Here's what to watch for. By February, Barnes's family must decide whether to petition the Supreme Court again. If they petition, they'll argue the Fifth Circuit defied the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling. Supreme Court options. Option 1. Grant cert again. The court could take the case again to enforce their ruling. This would be a strong signal that Circuit Court defiance won't be tolerated. Option 2. Summary reversal. The court could summarily reverse without full briefing or arguments if they believe the Fifth Circuit's defiance is clear. Option 3. Deny cert, but this would signal that circuit courts can ignore Supreme Court rulings. My prediction, I think the Supreme Court will take action if Barnes petitions. A 9-0 ruling being ignored just months later is too egregious to let stand. The court needs to send a message. When we say totality of circumstances, we mean it. You can't just pretend to apply it while reaching the same result. All right, Patriots, that's the breakdown of Barnes versus Felix and the Fifth Circuit's apparent defiance of a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling. Let me summarize. Supreme Court issued 9-0 ruling rejecting the moment of threat rule, ordered the Fifth Circuit to apply totality of circumstances. Fifth Circuit re-ruled without new briefs or arguments, reached the same conclusion favoring the officer. En banc review denied quickly. Case might head back to SCOTUS by February. Tests whether circuit courts will obey Supreme Court. This is judicial defiance in action. The Fifth Circuit appears to be saying, we'll use your words, but we'll reach the outcome we want. If you found this valuable, smash that like button. Share with anyone concerned about police accountability and judicial integrity. Subscribe for updates if this case goes back to the Supreme Court. Comment, do you think the Fifth Circuit defied the Supreme Court's ruling? Should SCOTUS take the case again? Until next time, stay armed, stay informed, and demand that all courts, including circuit courts, follow Supreme Court precedent. God bless America and the Constitution.